Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Meserve, and I am a newbie to the Volunteers of America Colorado team, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm part of a grant, and in the grant, I'm here to help encourage our VOA ministers and also for our outreach, especially spiritual outreach towards our clients, but also within the VOA staff. So I am coming up on a season that has been meaningful to me called Advent. Some of you know about that. And I asked Dave Shunk if it'd be okay if I could just introduce Advent and make available a resource. The resource is an Advent guide that my nonprofit that I'm part of has written. And we would do one of these every year, and we just wanted to make it available to you. So I'll come back to that, but I wanted to take a minute just to talk about the idea of Advent because not all of you are familiar with that. So Advent is a word, it's a Latin word that means arrival, and in the very early centuries, the Roman Empire would use that to talk about their emperor. Whenever the emperor would come to a new city, especially after he conquered them, it would be an arrival, an advent, and there would be a lot of celebration and a lot of preparation. Well, eventually the church, which became more and more Roman, it was birthed in a Jewish community, but as it became more and more Roman, it also wanted to celebrate kind of an advent, but not of the Roman emperor. They wanted to celebrate the advent or the arrival of their king, which they saw as Jesus. And so they wanted to honor his arrival as a baby in the Nativity, which of course we call Christmas. And that's something that's been going on in the church world since probably the 4th century. Now, the church would not simply like to just set apart a day, which they did. We call it Christmas or the Feast of the Nativity. But the church likes to bring a whole season into it to prepare you for a holy day. So, for example, you all know Easter. Easter has this season right before it called Lent. And Christmas actually has a season before it as well. It's called Advent, and it's honoring, again, that first arrival of Jesus. And if you've been part of a church that honored Advent, you would have seen that they do different candles, for example. Every year at that time, they have certain themes like love, joy, peace. They have certain readings, and there are certain songs that you sing specifically about this thing. Probably one of the best well-known is Joy to the World, which is, Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive, welcome her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing, and you know the rest. So the church does that, and then many of us grew up in a home where we would do something for Advent, and the most common thing was an Advent calendar where every day, starting December 1st, you'd open a little door, and behind the door, if you're lucky, was a piece of chocolate. This is awesome, and we all love that. But Advent, of course, means a little bit more. Now, as I got older and even working for a church, I found that this season of time leading up to Christmas is anything but holy and meaningful. Even in the church, everything was about the Christmas event, and we would put on some big production, and it was exhausting. And then at home, especially when I had younger kids, I have 3 children, and when they were young, you're shopping, you're decorating, you're going to outings, you're doing all this, and it was exhausting. And it's also wonderful and fun, and so it became a wonderful and is a wonderful family holiday, but it really wasn't a holy day. And the older I got, the more I wanted to kind of re-explore what it meant to make that kind of a meaningful spiritual experience. And so Advent came back into my life. And so I began to explore, well, what can we do for those weeks leading up to Christmas to bring more meaning into our life? Now, Advent comprises the 4 Sundays right before Christmas. And so this year, the first Sunday of Advent is in a couple weeks, right after Thanksgiving. It is on November 29th. And so I began to write about this and create something as a resource. And so we want to make this available to you. If you're interested, we'll make sure you get one of these. So it's an Advent guide. And what it is each week, there is a devotion that you can read. And it's very short, and it's just a few pages. And then the devotion is followed by some questions that you can reflect upon, think about. Great for a family. At least one of the questions is really focused on inviting kids into the conversation. And the theme is always around the nativity story, which is familiar to most of us, right? It's Jesus being born in Bethlehem in a stable. And so what we did, since we look at the same text every year, is we would build a theme around it. And the theme this year, we call it Sacred Places, because in this story, there's a lot of geography. Jesus is born in Bethlehem, but when he's 8 days old, because it's a Jewish tradition, he gets dedicated in Jerusalem at the temple. And then Herod was the king of that era, and he became very jealous and envious of the idea that there might have been a king born. And he's going to come to Bethlehem, and it's a tragic scene, but Jesus and the first family, Mary and Joseph, escape, and they go to Egypt. And anyway, so each week we talk about a new geography. And with that geography, there's a theme and a metaphor that could become important for us today. Like, what is your Bethlehem? I write about Nazareth, your hometown. What is that like for you? So we want to make these things available. Again, if you're interested, and all you have to do is email me, and the email address we're setting up is advent@voacolorado.org. So if you just email that and let me know that you'd want one, and where you are, I will get you one. Now, if you're in the admin building, which is where I am now, easy to get to you. If you're in another part of the city, and especially if you're in another part of the state, give me your mailing address. You could do a work one or home one, and I'll send you one of these. Now, I've got 40 of these to send, which is maybe enough. If it's not, I've got a PDF that I can also make available, a digital copy. I want everyone who wants one of these to have one of these. So that's what we're going to do. And then each week I'm going to do a little video that will just stick on the website to kind of introduce that week that you can also read about. And we'll see how it goes. Last thing I wanted to say. Now, some of you don't know anything about Advent because you weren't raised in that kind of a faith experience. Well, I hope you might be curious about it. When I have one son, Charlie, he's in college now, but when he was in middle school, his best friend was Max. And Max was Jewish, and we got to know and love this family, and they loved Charlie. And one year in middle school, they invited Charlie to come into their family and celebrate Hanukkah with them. Now, I never been able to do that, but my son did, and he would come home and share the experiences, and it was actually fascinating and great for our whole family and very meaningful. So even if Advent is not on your radar, you never heard about it till today, well, if you're curious at all, love to invite you into this, and maybe it's just kind of an educational experience. But honestly, the whole point is to give us this space where at least once a week we kind of focus on something good and meaningful that pulls us away from the rush of the holidays, but this year especially, that gives us that space to breathe in light of the fact that we're going through this pandemic. It is just the most unusual year. And in my mind, it's the year we need to be even more intentional at developing the inner person and our spiritual life. So we hope this helps. We hope you take advantage of this. And whether you do or not, blessings to you. And I will remember to pray for all Volunteers of America staff in Colorado, that this is a really meaningful, safe, and wonderful time for you as a person, in your family, and in your work here at VOA. All right. God bless you.